Marty, thank you so much for letting me come teach a few lessons on your channel. Today, we are going to talk about how you dial in an amp. And really, the coolest thing about dialing in and finding the best tone in an amp is that it's up to you. It's up to your ears and whatever you think is going to sound cool. But I'm going to show you some tips that I've found dialing in some of the guitars I play, and maybe you can use that to apply to yours. So I play a lot of Strats usually. Strats have single coil pickups that are very bright, they're very crisp, clean. Let's start here. This is a deluxe reverb. It's an amp that's very good for clean tones. We'll start with a flat EQ. Now, a flat EQ basically means is everything's even. Deluxe reverbs have two separate channels. My favorite channel to use on a deluxe reverb is the vibrato channel. And I don't even generally use the vibrato within the amp itself. You can, and we'll get into that in a minute so you can hear what it sounds like. I just love how the vibrato channel in a deluxe sounds. Generally, depending on where I'm playing, I run my amp at like 3.5 volume-wise, but if you're playing in your bedroom, maybe you want your amp a little bit quieter than that. Let's start with just a flat EQ. So when I say EQ, EQ is short for equalizer, and it basically means out of all of the frequencies that your guitar is sending through to the amp, the treble is going to take like the high frequencies and either turn them up and down. And so it's going to take the volume of those high frequencies and make them higher or lower, louder or softer. Just as the bass knob is going to take the lower frequencies, like you play when you play like low, big notes, and going to take those lower frequencies and either make them louder or softer. A flat EQ. So that basically means your treble, your bass, if you have a mid control, everything is pretty much even. It's like, in our case, 5. It's like right in the middle. And we'll hear what that sounds like. Right now, the reverb and everything is just off. Okay, so it's bright, it's crisp, it's clean. Sometimes with single coils, because they are already so bright and crisp and clean, I tend to take back my treble a little bit. I tend to like my treble around like a 3. And then I usually like to give a little bit more room on the bass knob. And so I tend to run my bass knob pretty high. I like to run it between a 6 and a 7 usually. It finds that sweet spot in a single coil because they're already so bright as it is. So let's hear how this is different. Notice how it just gave it a little bit more meat on the bones, which is something that's really nice if you're adding pedals in after the fact. So with single coils, I like to add a little bit more bass to it. So reverb, if you're not too familiar with reverb, you guys are all familiar with delay or echoes, but reverb is like a bunch of quick little reflections to give you a sense of space. Built-in reverb is a beautiful thing, so let's just add a little bit of built-in reverb so you can hear what that sounds like too. Did you hear that? Let's add a little bit more so you can actually hear the difference. would normally play with, I'd probably keep my reverb down to probably about 2.5. Just a little bit to give it that extra flavor, which I find with single coils really, really beautiful. Let's switch guitars. All right, so now we have an SG. There are humbucker pickups in this SG. And so humbuckers by nature are a little bit warmer, they're a little bit darker, they're a little bit louder, they take on distortion very well. We have flattened out our amp once again, so everything's sort of like in the middle. And let's hear what it sounds like just with no EQ. Okay, so you can definitely see a change from the single coils. Automatically, these pickups are a little bit darker. So when I go to dialing in my amp, I would be like, okay, the pickups are a little bit darker, so I'm gonna take my treble knob, give it a little bit more. So I'll run my treble knob between maybe a 6 and a 7, maybe closer to a 7. And then because it's a little bit darker, I may even take away a little bit of the bass frequencies. So that's making the bass frequencies softer. Let's see how that sounds. Okay, so that definitely made the guitar come more alive. It made it cut through a lot more. And if you were stacking some pedals on top of that, it would take away some of the darkness of a humbucker sometimes. Sometimes maybe even that was a bit too bright maybe, so maybe we want to take back a little bit of the treble. The great thing about dialing an amp in is you can always change your mind. So this is with the treble dialed back to a 6. Again, dialing in an amp is so subjective, up to your own ears. That sounds good to me. I love how that's sort of a happy medium. It's a lot to whatever you think sounds best. So this amp doesn't have a mid knob, but if your amp does have a mid knob, I mean, sometimes amps have even 2 times the knobs that this amp has, and it basically just gives you more control over what sound you want to get out of your amp. A lot of times too, the style you're playing determines what kind of tone you want to get. If you're playing a lot of John Mayer songs, sometimes if we were to have a mid knob on this amp, I would take the mid knob and turn it down and kind of scoop the mids. If we were playing AC/DC songs, I'd want to turn that mid knob up and maybe hear the mids a little bit more prominent. So a lot of it determines on the style you're playing, but if you have a mid knob, you can also play around with that, specifically with humbucker pickups. All right, so here we have my hollow body guitar. This is a Guild Starfire guitar. Unlike the humbucker pickups in an SG, this has humbuckers as well, but you also have the sound interacting with the tone and the hollow space within the guitar. It's really beautiful, it's really warm, it's a little bit darker, obviously a lot darker than the Strat we played a little bit ago, but let's hear how this thing sounds. So with this, I would also want to take our treble knob and boost it up a little bit. I would take a little bit of our bass frequencies down. And if I had a mid knob, I would probably want to take a few of the mids out. But let's hear what this sounds like with a bit more treble. And see how it sounds different if I strum. So let's say I was strumming a lot versus if I use my fingers and I'm picking. So the way you play or how you're gonna play for that day may also determine on how you wanna dial in your amp. If I was playing with my fingers, it's a little bit darker. So maybe I want to even give it a little bit more treble and a little bit less bass to help it cut through just that little bit more. Now, the one more thing I want to touch on is, since we're on the vibrato channel, I want you to be able to hear the vibrato within a deluxe reverb. It's really pretty. And the cool thing about it is you can change the speed of it with the speed knob and the intensity with it with the intensity knob. Let's just really crank this up so you can hear the difference. And let's say we wanted that slower. Or if you wanted it really fast for whatever reason. And the intensity knob is just going to make the tremolo sound more drastic. So this is with the intensity turned all the way up at a pretty good speed. That's probably pretty intense for most playing. So this is the intensity knob turned way back. So that's just one added element to a deluxe reverb that is kind of fun to play with sometimes. Guys, thank you so much. My name is Lindsay L. Thank you for hanging with us today, learning how to dial in your amp regardless of what guitar you're playing. Please make sure to subscribe and follow Marty Music below, as well as check out my own channel. We'll see you next time.